did with me
Just
swearing
slightly.
and looking stressed. I might stop swearing. I probably won't stop looking stressed. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to Eyes and Ears number 5. Been a wee bit of time since we had the last one, so we thought we'd ask Mark along. He hasn't been on for a while to talk a little bit about his dynamic points article, and then we're going to talk a little bit about a few competitions that have been, see if Mark's article is reflects the actuality of what's happened, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Berlin book, which I think has come out since we last spoke, and Mark's developed a loving interest in railway trucks with guns on them. So I just have to get.
I just don't like reserves.
We just have to get him interested.
Why don't you go with schoolboys then? Schoolboys and Richards, or men in the age.
I'm just going to take that quote for you. Why don't you go with schoolboys? I mean,
so before we lose this,
you get arrested for things like that.
For inappropriate content, right? Yeah. And I'm going to let that little bit of a dig at schoolboys and old men go with my name being mentioned, Mr. Lund. Don't think I didn't hear you. So obviously, dynamic points came out. It's been something I think a number of us have been pushing Battlefront for, because mid-war points seem to be a little bit askew, and I think some of us have also done some work with the guys from the Bun Shop here in the UK, which were working on their own repointing system. So I thought I'd just go around and ask people what they thought, and I'll start with Mark because Mark's written an article about it. So
I'm going to remember what I wrote now.
Don't just read the article out to us, right? I don't know how much you've played competition-wise. Probably not much since they came out.
So I actually haven't played a competition since it's come out, but I have kept an eye on the ones that have. I think in a nutshell, as I did say in the article, I thought if you look at it as a glass half full, I think is a positive step forward. It is a big deal for Battlefront to bring these points out. We have seen repoints before, but that's when individual armies have been completely broken. I mean, go back, about a decade now, the British BAR early war army got stickers issued and repointed. We saw Red Bear and V3 repoint the Soviets, but they've never kind of gone back and gone, let's look at it as a whole. So that's the positive. I think they've taken a very softly approach. I think perhaps a little bit too much. They actually could have been far more dynamic and had a really good, it doesn't mean they had to do all of it, but I think they had a really good roadmap from some really experienced competitive players in the BIG points. And as I keep saying, it doesn't mean you've got to play competitively, but a game that's balanced for competitive play is balanced for all play. What I did find odd was the kind of cover letter that came with it, which kind of went we don't really want to do this, but we've kind of been bounced into it. Our system's wonderful, but hey, let's change the points anyway, which just seemed a little bit odd from a marketing point of view, but hey ho, TIB, this is Battlefront. But as I say, it's made some stuff much more viable. T-34s certainly have a place. You're not going to see all the automatic included armadas, so you've got less high-end AT, which I think will encourage medium tanks to certainly be taking a look. But fundamentally, I still think light armor is still great value. They didn't go far enough. It's still better value than most mediums, and it's still better than infantry. And what I cannot fathom is why they dropped the points on the KV. It wasn't bad to begin with. And now you've got less high-end AT, you've now got a really good bargain in a front armor 9 vehicle. It doesn't matter that it's cautious. Sorry, not cautious. It's 2+ to hit. Well, it doesn't matter if you can't kill it. You can hit it all day long. So I think that's the biggest winner is KVs, ironically, when that wasn't the point of dynamic points. Not that it's allowed in, I think, any major UK event, but the KV5 is still the most obvious best unit in the game, even though it didn't exist. There you go. And show them by winning a Depticon.
Yeah. Martin, I'm going to chuck to you. What's been your views and experience?
My view is a bit similar to Mark's, I suppose, in many respects. I'm pleased they've done it. I'm also fairly understanding of why they've taken a limited approach to it. So I think that enables them to sit back and look at it a bit. Some of it I didn't think was necessary. I'll be brutally honest about that. I didn't understand some of it, and still don't. And a lot of the armies I play with have been beneficiaries of it, and I still don't see the point to it. They were perfectly good beforehand. I'm probably the least likely person on the call to be at a tournament after yourself, Richard. In fact, probably even less likely than you, because at least I know you do go and play some TY. But yeah, overall, my views, it's a good first step. I seriously hope they're going to address the issue of gun teams, because I think that, having played a few times recently at mid-war, is the biggest issue now.
As in they're too good?
As in they're too cheap. They're too expensive. A lot of them. Yeah. A lot of them are just too expensive, particularly compared to the Spar option. You know, if you
I noticed that some towed artillery.
You can have the worst defender without a shadow of doubt is the German 10.5 centimeter gun, at 14 points for 4 static guns, compared to what is now 10 points for 3 10.5 Vesps. Now you've got the same gun, a better platform. Whether you've got 3 guns or 4 guns is pretty immaterial in the game. Overall, it has a minimal impact, but the different, 4 points more for the extra static gun. Come on, you're having a laugh. And it's a ubiquitous weapon of the war that, how often do you see it on the table? I've got boxes of them sitting in the shelves here. They'll never come out because they're just not, unless you're going to play a historical refight, they're just never going to get on your list because they're just obviously a bad choice. Given you can have an alternative that's equally effective in the game and considerably less points. And when you
arguably more effective, you don't take the double re-rolls if you're under a temp. If you're under
yeah, that's going to say
move out of the way if you are.
You can move, you can shoot. You've got a machine gun as well, which is handy. So although you've got one less barraging gun, you've actually got a much better defensive position. Even if you're sat in the open, it's a much better, harder thing to kill.
It's the same as the priest with the Yanks.
Yeah,
you're just like, why would you take 105? This is mid-war and late war. Even more no-brainer in late war.
Yeah, I was going to say late war. It's an even worse choice because the Vesps are what, 6 points in Berlin or something? Ridiculous.
I can check.
It's not very many. I know that. It might be 7. But
hold on, give me a sec.
Yeah, I'll let you go look it up.
There's a man with a bookcase full of Battlefront products. There.
Well, I've got a bookcase full as well, but I can't be bothered to move.
Mine are upstairs, and I'm not going upstairs.
No, mine like Ludwig's sit behind me, but I can't reach mine in one go. My room's the other way around. It's a long ways. But yeah, no. Overall, I think it's a good first step. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens toward the end of this year and what they choose to look at. Because I can't, the one thing, you've got to bear in mind is, as we often say on various things we do collectively, is there's not very many of them. They are a small company.
Yeah, that's right.
So they can't look at the whole pantheon of the game at once. But I think what it does do is allow them to look at slices of it a bit more, and create a bit more balanced view. Arguably, why don't you do that when you're creating the books and have a stock trade-off against a standard standard arranged unit? Go on, Hawk. You look like, is he frozen or is he?
Yeah.
So what's the answer?
He's just in finished sniper mode and staying very still.
I know, it's unnerving.
So, the Berlin books Wesps, it's 3 for 9 points and 6 for 18.
I can have 6. They are still 9 points.
I still find hilarious the fact that double the number of guns in any battery
It's
is
not double
the
the
price.
points. It's not
but
double
it's not
the points.
doubly effective.
No.
And I've had this argument before. You're going, why on earth would somebody take six priests when you could take 2 times 3 and have 2 time on target bombardments, double smoke,
Yeah,
board control, and all the stuff that goes with it?
yeah. The reroll, being able to reroll. Oh, I got a view on the whole subject of rerolls, but maybe that might be safe for another day.
Yeah, Ludwig, what do you think of dynamic points? Because I know you've run a competition. Points and
I was the TO for the Finnish Nationals, the Winter War tournament, and we didn't allow any paper tanks, and
what do you mean by paper tanks?
So mid-war monsters didn't see service.
Yeah, mid-war monsters and so on.
Was that none at all, or the historic list that
we used the list that's been prepared for?
Yeah. So if it saw action, it was a real vehicle.
Yeah, and then we limited the amount of reconnaissance vehicles you could take. It's been soon 2 months. Can't remember exactly how. I think it was 5
units of scout. Same as ETC.
Yeah, basically, and it was a great event. I mean,
it's good until the last round.
Never. Richard being in the top 3, if I can remember correctly. But yeah, I mean, we had 36 players, 11 countries represented. Really, a really good time.
It's all about.
And I think, and I mean, explaining how good of a time most people had, I think, is the fact that we had 19 people being voted for favorite opponent.
Wow, it's quite a spread.
Yeah, so there was a lot of nice people.
And me.
Yeah, it was good.
So where did you come in the end?
So I was winning until the last round, and I ended up 5th.
That's what Germany said.
Yeah, but they said it again. See, I only ever get to say it once a century. So I was. I took a very historic army, and it was a very historic army, which did slightly benefit from something that you mentioned. So my Finnish KVs, of which I can have the grand total of 2, did come down in price. Is that it's your
I've just paid for?
It's because you're back.
Just to show. Oh yeah.
You need to bring it closer. Actually, just leave it there because it looks better than you.
I don't understand. What are those big red stars on the side for, Mark? They're Chinese.
Something like that.
Yeah. So
I've been winding
we hate to point out that
Russian
made tanks didn't tend to have red stars on the side of them.
When you're painting the baddies, you don't care too much.
Yeah, I think that's a philosophical debate for an entirely different day.
All a matter of viewpoint.
I mean, my thoughts on dynamic point. I think I don't disagree with anything that anybody said. I don't think it went far enough. I think that infantry is still too expensive for me. I think the gun thing is surreal. It was interesting that people that I know who were in, so there's quite a lot of us went to Finland that I've known each other a while. A couple of the new players from Ireland came over, and very clearly their current approach to life has been that they just don't bother with infantry in mid-war because it's too expensive and they don't know how to use it. Although they had a competition this weekend where there was a lot more infantry, and I think people had learned from the fact that you could do pretty well with infantry in mid-war, and the winner, Raphael, is it? Etienne, yeah, sorry, who won? I should know because he beat me in the last round. Took motor stroke and had a big motor stroke. So I think there's that, but
not the heroes.
Yeah, the heroes. Yeah. Why would you not? Hit them too.
Something that should have been addressed in dynamic points.
Yeah, and I know the reason why you're painting KVs, mate. So I know that you've got an affinity to motor stroke as well, as indeed I may have.
They're not moto.
Oh, they're just you're just taking hero stroke, are you?
Just bog standard heroes.
Okay, right. So it could have gone further, but I think Martin's point is right. They are a small group of guys. and I think they do have a genuine concern about making the books completely obsolete so soon after they've come out. And I think that partly explains that really odd statement, which looks odd to us, which is, well, it's not broken, but we're going to do this because. And I think to give them an out, and to be fair to them, which perhaps over the years I haven't always been as fair to Battlefront as I might have been, and I'm not getting paid to say that, is if you've got a stock of books with a set of points in them, you don't want to completely invalidate that point system and have people moaning about the fact that their books are out of date. And I mean, I remember the British Armoured Regiment, which meant that you could ambush with 21 tanks.
Something crackers. Yeah.
In fact, you could have your entire army on the table in ambush.
For about no points, if I recall as well.
And it
was insane.
But they've got a £2 gun, which is anti-tank 7, which is pretty good in early war. So I also agree. I don't see why the KVs needed a buff. I would have taken the KVs. I would have taken the list I took to Helsinki anyway, because I was going to Helsinki. So why would I not take Finns? I would have taken them at the extra points that it would have cost me. I would have fitted them in because that was what I wanted to take. And I think in Mark's article, he says, why would you not take 5 KV8s for 24 points?
25
points.
They're 5 points each, aren't they?
Yeah, 5 points each.
An 87, was it 87 tank?
Yeah,
with a flamethrower?
87 gun on a front
armor 9 vehicle in mid-war for 5 points.
And so, yes, you're dead easy to hit.
It doesn't matter.
There's only
matter.
The British can only kill you with a 1725, or if they've nicked an M10 from the Americans, which wouldn't be me because that's not how I play. But I do think it does make medium tanks better, but I don't think it's outpriced some of the spammy light tank stuff. So I think that's why
you take both.
Well, yeah, at the finish, in the finish, we did that limit, which we're probably going to do at the ETC. So I took a infantry formation with a tank formation. I played quite aggressively. I actually played quite aggressively on the first day, won all my games 8-1, including against Christian. So if you do catch up with this podcast, Christian, thanks very much, mate. I really did enjoy that game. And then I stupidly went a bit more defensive with it on the Sunday, and I drew 1 and lost 1. So, it was, but it was good fun. Got to go to Parala, which is absolutely fantastic. If you're ever in Finland, you really do have to go to the tank museum. But look, we shouldn't begrudge the fact that it's a small team with a stock of books, and actually give them credit for doing what they've done and changing the points.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
it's the first step.
Yeah, hopefully, as they listen, if it is dynamic, then they can shift the points back on the KVs, because I think there's going to be a lot of KVs at the.
But that's what I didn't get. They had the opportunity to take that feedback when it first dropped, and that didn't happen. And that's what kind of worries me a little bit. Where everyone kind of went, "What?" I don't think they got a particularly big response to that survey they put out, but I think you look at why people don't fill out surveys, it's because they ask so many questions on every single unit. You're like,
yeah, having a month-long period for the feedback, that's not long enough.
Yeah,
to be honest,
it's a standard time for most people's feedback.
The trouble is, if you open that window, the longer you make that window, the longer the uncertainty remains, because because you've still got to look at that, you've still got to analyze it, and you've still got to decide what you're going to do. So I was amazed it was actually that long, to be quite honest. I'd actually thought, well, we give people a couple of weeks to give some response, but when I did do the survey, and when I filled it in, I understood why they opened it for so long, because to be quite honest,
so long.
I did write them quite a long email about the survey and what it did or didn't achieve in very polite language. It was quite restrictive in what it did. in terms of feedback, and it didn't ask the right questions. I don't think. You know, you only, or alternatively, we only needed 3 choices. We agree, we disagree, or we just don't have an opinion. We didn't need 4 options, and we didn't necessarily. I can see why they set it up the way they set it up, because it's obviously easy to claim. But yeah, I would be intrigued to know what that actually looked like, and again, who responds to those things makes a lot of difference. I think that's another kind of thing that sometimes gets lost. In the only feedback anybody ever sees is if you follow the various social media feeds. Now, given that I think the official Facebook page has got something like 3,500 followers, which isn't that many, and the unofficial one's got a similar number. Whether they're the same people or not, I don't know, because I only use one of them.
Usually it's the same faces.
But I suspect those that are most vociferous, not necessarily vociferous, but those that post the most are probably the same people in both camps. And
I mean,
what you've got to think about is actually probably the vast majority of people who play FO don't do either of those, don't follow either of those pages, and they don't provide any feedback. So I'm always a bit wary of some of these things where the feedback comes from a particular community out of the totality of the gamers. And of that community, it breaks into 2 kind of chunks. You know, the occasional gamers who like to follow who are interested in following the game in its generality, and probably the more competitive elements in the gaming world, who, you know, want to know what the latest and greatest ideas are across the globe, because the game seems to be very different. I think, you know, anecdotally, in my opinion of things at the moment, there is a great divergence in the way we play between what's going on in the US and what's going on in everywhere, particularly in Europe. Now, whether that's true or not is debatable, but certainly it seems to be quite divergent. You know, gaming has always been different in different places. You know, I've played enough of them to know. But at the moment, there seems to be quite a distinct differential in the way in which the game is actually played, and the way in which people approach trying to play the game.
You know, they already think about the points. In the US, they tend to play with 105 points.
Wow. How many?
That's because they're driven by the masters.
Yeah, but
which is a whole discussion in itself, and tend to take the official points.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with how many. It's not how many points you play with. I don't think makes much difference.
I mean, I think
it's the style in which you play. I
think a big difference has been that over here, there has been a general acceptance amongst competitions that the mid-war monsters stuff isn't really for competitive play, whereas it's absolutely allowed in the States. And, interestingly, I remember, I mean, I'm old enough to remember them coming out for version 3, and they I don't think we ever explicitly needed to ban them from competitions, because nobody ever thought they were worth taking, because the structure of the game was different in that you could win the game without having to deal with them. But now, of course, you park them on an objective, and you've got to do something. You can't just ignore them like you would ignore them in V3. I mean,
I think there's a reason why you see them there, because some of the biggest events in the US are actually run by Battlefront, whereas Battlefront don't run events.
Pretty much anywhere else
in Europe, they rely on us to run them, and we wouldn't. You know, equally, I only learned recently, Adepticon, for example, they're not going to put a caveat in saying you can't take their models. Equally, Adepticon is the only event where you have to bring Battlefront models. I thought after the storm that happened a number of years ago about that went, but they snuck that back into Adepticon. Whereas, you know, I speak for you, Hawkeye, as well. We both run national competitions, and we would refuse to do that, which means
I don't think you get. I think you get a player pushback, wouldn't you, in the UK?
Well, that's why, because you wouldn't get anyone going.
And you'd have to sell your 3D printer for a start. So I mean, I think it is different. I looked through the lists for the competition that the guys Piotr and Christoph ran in Wicklow at the weekend, and clearly some people thought there was going to be a lot of KVs because they went loaded up for game. They went with, Lancia, Max Lancia, Max 88, long barrel 720s, and in fact, only one person turned up with KVs. So there was all this stuff which was vastly overkill for the stuff that was on the board. And although the Italians won an Italian defensive list won, so that was kind of interesting. I wonder whether people are still.
But would they consider themselves, trying to build competitive lists?
So a number of them were trying out their ETC lists. So and there was some reasonally decent. I mean,
the difference you have the difference you have in a regular tournament versus the ETC though is you can't mimic the pairing.
No.
So,
but there were some good players. I mean,
you're not going to get the same impacts.
Guys who have won tournaments and are respected opponents. So Scott was there. Scott won Polar Bear last time we were over in Iceland. Johnny Fisher, who's a good player, who's played for a number of countries, but he's a good, solid Flamers of War player. Ulick, who I've known for a long, long time. So there was some good, there was a decent level of competition, and I think that people are gaining from the experience of playing against other people competitively, and the lists are definitely getting better. But yeah, I think in terms of the dynamic points, if we just to talk about the feedback stuff, I think my experience at work is, although we put stuff out for consultation for a month, if people haven't responded inside the first 5 or 6 days, they're probably not going to respond.
I agree.
Unless you're emailing them all the time, and our system allows us to do that, whereas Battlefronts won't allow them to do that. So I think maybe 2 weeks was probably plenty. But hopefully it's something that they'll be open to having a conversation again about, and starting that process of tweaking without invalidating the printed material. But I think I think more and more people will go.
And I get that they don't want to do that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah,
the investment in producing those books is huge.
Yeah, and it's not a stock to have stuck on your shelves if you can't shift it.
Look how many V3, how many V3 books are still floating about in shops.
Oh yeah.
We don't. I live in the glorious South. We don't have many gaming shops. They're all north of the border. By that,
that north of Watford, is that?
Yeah, certainly. They're certainly north of Watford. Most of them are north of the Thames.
But you say that, that they produce these books. I mean, look at the compilations for North Africa and Eastern Europe. And I mean, of course, players come and go and you get some new players. But, was there really this queue of people who go, do you know what? I've got the books I want, but, I'll buy this compilation as well that also doesn't have anything new in. Whereas previously, compilations had new stuff.
Well, that's why the compilation this time does have new things in it.
One unit.
No, there are considerably more than one unit in the new book, in that compilation book, Mark. They're just units that we might choose not to want in the game.
Yeah. So it's the the mid-war monsters.
Yeah, it's all course on the paper. The paper,
and
equally, actually, the things that are in the book. Equally, there are things in those mid-war compilation books that, yes, they existed, but they weren't actually used in the mid-war. They were used in the late war period. So what are they doing in? The IS2 shouldn't, or the IS 85s, aren't they?
IS 85, yeah.
85s fought from 43 to 44, so they sit in that awkward spot.
So there is some feedback in the YouTube chat. So Erin, apologies, Erin, if I completely make a mess of your surname. So Erin Macheski Preston says the US points are driven by a points total that's drawn out of a hat.
That's how they do it. I've always wondered how they come up with that number.
And it's how is this different from the ETC and the EU? Well, the ETC's largely always been 100 points, although this year, for some reason, we've gone to 101.
It's to produce 5 minefields to help defenders.
And then Erin makes a point about that mid-war monsters are frowned upon over this way. It just varies by region, and if it's a battlefront event, they won't exclude them.
No, of course they won't.
And of course, they're not going to exclude something that. So thanks for that, Erin. That's really actually quite useful feedback. and helps us, us your old colonial oppressors to actually understand. Well, apart from Luda, who's never colonially oppressed anybody, to understand.
He's been colonially oppressed, though.
He's been colonially oppressed by loads of people. He does have a Swedish name, so somewhere in his past, his family were a colonial oppressor. So
yeah, technically, we just raided all of Europe.
But none of the Finns Vikings.
Not as much as the Danes and the Norwegians. So so I think that's dynamic points done to death. We're gonna move on and have a wee chat about the Berlin book. Now, of course, this is of only passing interest to me because, as many of you know, I don't play Axis Forces, so I've had a quick look at it on Forces, and I'm aware that lots of people got quite excited about a number of things in it. So I'm going to turn over to three people who do play Germans to have a chat about Berlin, and I'm going to invite Luda to go first. What were your thoughts when you saw it, mate?
Well, first of all, I was super eager about the Panzersturm units, well, the models coming out again. Same with the Volkssturm, the schoolboys.
Does he mean these ones?
Yeah.
You should have let me know. They've been in the cupboard since like they came out the first time.
No, I mean these technically the IR equipped.
The Valkyries,
heavy SS. But I only picked up the book on Sunday when I came flew back from Austria to Helsinki. So I haven't had more than a quick flip through the book, but it looks all right. I've got some good ideas on what lists to build, and although I have to say I was hoping for a bit more historical units in the card deck, in the command cards. There's no mention of the SS Charlemagne unit, even though they were technically the last unit to drop their weapons in Berlin, which is a bit interesting. There's no mention of the so-called mad dash of SS Vikings reconnaissance detachment trying to literally drive through the Soviet siege encirclement, being destroyed on the way, but could have been something fun to do. But I'm currently thinking about how I could still try to make an interesting list combining the new units and some. I really like the SS Tank Hunter card for infantry. I can't remember the exact name.
Oh yeah.
But technically, you can
Shrek Faust units.
Yeah.
The little groups of Shreks and Fausts.
Yeah, technically you can just add platoons to your formation. Was it 11 or 12 points?
11, I think.
11, yeah.
Yeah, used to be called Panzerlehr Tank Hunters back in the day.
Was that when you still had those black uniforms on?
Might well have done. I spent many years wearing a brown uniform with my youth.
You were a brownie?
No, I was a scout.
I could have sworn that my scout uniform was green.
When I was a scout, it was green. But when you get a big scout, you wear a brown one. It goes brown.
Okay.
I thought Richard was a pioneer.
Yeah, I was the only one in my area.
The only one.
Okay, yeah.
I could wear what I liked.
Yeah. And you didn't have to share with anyone.
No, he likes to share with everybody. He's communist.
No, but I mean, well, if you're the only one, you don't really need to share.
That's the difference.
Do you? No, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I'm
I'm excited about the book, and I can't. Well, I've got a pile of boxes next to me, which I should get done for a tournament in a few weeks. So that's why I'm
Painting
what I'm
now.
doing over here.
So I'm waiting for paint to come for what I'm painting, but as that's 1/3000th ships, we won't cover that in tonight's episode. Mark, Berlin and your train car fixation.
So, I've only got 4 of them. That is first of all, it is great to see them back, and it's a really cool. That is a really cool dynamic. It was in V3, and it's nice to see some of those, I'd say, kind of funky units come back. The Night Panthers, the railway guns. Again, it's just crying out for lessons from the front. The railway gun needs a massive lessons from the front. So Reader's written at the minute, it's dug in when it ambushes because it's a gun team and all gun teams start dug in. It's missing its gun shield, although the model has a gun shield. And then we have to work out whether it can ambush within 16 or not, because Reader's written it can't. But given that you have to ambush on this railroad,
doesn't it have the? Isn't that written on the railway carriage card that they can be placed within 16 despite being large guns?
It's not, and it doesn't remove the large gun rule either.
Right.
I suspect I know what's coming in lessons from the front, but Reader's written it can't. But I also would suggest it probably isn't meant to be dug in, but Reader's written it is. So
I don't understand why it's not an unarmored tank team.
Well, yeah,
would be my view on it. It should be an unarmored tank team.
If you blow up the wagon, the gun's not going to be much use, is it?
No, it should play like all the other big guns on the backs of vehicles.
Yeah,
but they are pretty cool, and I have 4 of them which have been delivered. So, my cunning plan, I think the great winner out of it, and it might be rubbish when it gets there, but I have 5 platoons of Volstrom arrived, 2 platoons of their mortars, 2 platoons of their infantry guns, and then some nests for their MGs. So that produces over 40 points. So I have no reserves.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Mark, how many points will you be deploying as a defender?
100 in a 100-point game.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so I've kind of gone. They're just
How did the Germans lose?
Pardon?
How did the Germans lose?
Well, it's really easy. You drop a very large template weapon on top of that lot and watch it all die.
Well, you say that, but you've got 4 counter battery.
Yeah, but you're not. The trouble is, Mark, you're not going first. I am.
Yeah, but then you've still got they're still aggressive infantry. So yeah, don't get me wrong, they'll die, but they're not 2+ to hit. They're the same as
Soviets.
They're
3s, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same as killing Soviets, but there's 50 stands of them, and then you've got 3 King Tigers in ambush.
Yeah, but they're not. Well, that's
they're
fine.
You
can ambush maybe the 3 King Tigers if you can find a bit of terrain big enough or a hill to hide behind.
Do I need to ambush with them?
Why would you bother? Why would you ambush them?
More than 16 inches.
But don't forget, you've got 6, and obviously, if you're a good player, you're not going to deploy those on the objective. So if you get 1 assault off, push them back, you've won the game. You're gonna deploy them nicely forward, and you're going to go. You've got 6 turns to get into assault with all those Fausts, backed up by heavy machine gun nests, backed up by King Tigers, while I'm raining artillery on you. I've got ambushing 88s, and you've got 6 turns to get within 8 inches of that objective with enough stuff that I'm not going to blow you away next turn. Don't get me wrong, it will happen, but I don't think anybody's really realistically ever put 50 stands of Panzerfaust packing infantry, which hit on 3s on the table.
No,
Mark, have you ever seen anyone? Mark, have you ever seen anyone willing to paint 50 stands of infantry?
Hold my beer,
because
I am doing that, and I'm a glutton for punishment. I've got scenic bases for them as well.
Okay,
of course.
I have 3 Strelk armies.
I might be cheesy, but I paint the cheese.
Yeah, perhaps you should just paint everything plain yellow.
I thought of going for night attack, and I was just going to paint them black.
Black, yeah,
or green. But let's perhaps not go down that route.
Moving on to night attack.
Yankee competition.
I want to really love the fact. I do love the fact that the Night Panthers are back. It's really cool, but I just don't think night attack works in V4, and the whole you can't move anything else out the deployment zone, and then you're also like. You get these Panthers and this infantry out, they're reluctant. So if you do ever manage to get into assault, which is often how you win a game, pushing people off an objective, you're not going to win. You're not
going to win that, are you?
You're going to counterattack on a 5. So you go all the way through this with your expensive Panthers, hoping the sun doesn't come up, and then you're reluctant. And I'm like, and then nothing else can leave the deployment zone to back you up. So you're kind of alone and unafraid.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't work for the British. You don't see British
Well,
players
that's
using night
it.
attack. I mean,
And you used to see it all
night
the
attack
time.
used to be, yeah. Well, I mean, British paras with night attack, right?
Yeah.
It was a really popular list under version 3. Where
That and
play out.
infiltrate.
Yeah,
I really miss, because those were
Infiltrate's
perhaps the
excellent, yeah.
tensest games you got. Was people, oh my god, the Brit paras are coming for me at night, and oh my god, that guy's just infiltrated 40 standard Soviet infantry 6 inches away from me and gone, fine, take the first turn, and you're like desperately holding them off with every machine gun shot you can find, just trying to survive. Well, you don't see that anymore.
no. Martin, anything to add on the Berlin book?
Other than I won't be building a force from it, no.
Well, that's kind of
Why
me.
not?
I've had a quick look, and Mark and I talked about it when I went down.
It's not my bag, Berlin Germans, I have to say. My Germans really end at 1943. I don't really play with them in late war very often. I've got some, but I don't very often play with them. They're not my favourite flavour of thing in the late war period, as is fairly obvious from what I write about. But yeah, it's the problem I think you always face if you're going to play Germans is actually the fact you've just got so many choices of what to choose.
Yeah.
You can have anything pretty much you like.
Yeah, there's no
actually, well, whether you can afford it or not is besides the point, but you could choose it. And that's what I think usually results in the downfall of so many German players, is that the smorgasbord that is the German army, it is very, very much that, and it's very hard to put it together consistently. It's very good against certain things at certain times. But if you come up against the wrong thing too often, which is inevitable, or you end up playing another German list, which in most competitions is what will happen if they're, you always find that with, I saw that a little bit with I only played a couple of events last year, but I saw that quite a lot with the Americans. Lots of people have realised at that point, bulge Americans are great. But the trouble is, if half the field have got bulge Americans and you're planning an open event, well, it's pretty dull.
Nationals last year, there were Yanks everywhere, and you were like, well, only one of you can win the game.
Yeah, what did you take,
and then you end up playing each other, and there's nothing.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, and there's nothing.
Mark, you played last Nationals.
No, that was Warfare.
No, he bought the Conga line to Warfare.
That was Warfare.
I wasn't there.
No one else has ever competitively takes M18 formation, so I'm just going to throw that up.
Right. Well, in the good old days, I used to take Task Force A.
Task Force A.
Yeah, well, that was a good list. So it's impossible to replicate in V4.
Meta breaking, Richard. That was meta breaking.
It was, it was. So
not as much as Martin though.
I think there is that choice element with the Germans. Is you just get so many.
For me, you got so many choices.
Yeah, and then it just overwhelm. I think it can overwhelm newer players, definitely.
Yeah, and that's what people. Newer players tend to play with what the models they like the look of, and the things they like, and not being funny, you then come up against things like Mark's Volks list, and you've just got no hope.
Because I can't wait to see a couple of Volkssturm armies facing off against each other on the table. That'll
make for a very entertaining game.
Well, like you say, it works until you come up with something that actually, is packing ridiculous amounts of artillery and the right, there's always a counter to it. It's minimizing what that counter is, but and the thing is, once people, so I put it out in an article, everyone's going to be thinking about it, but competitive players are going to be going, I've got to consider that now, and people will. That's what the meta will develop. If people start running that, I'm still dubious. Most people, like you say, will paint that much infantry. But if that starts becoming the new Brit Recce in inverted commas, the meta will quickly find a counter to it.
Yep.
So
that is true.
Aren't you doing something with Alex about Berlin? Because I know Alex Montalvo that used to. So he's quite big on Berlin, isn't he?
Yeah. So we're planning to do a joint article. I haven't been able to write an article in about a year.
I'm not sure you finished last year's one you were writing.
No,
how's that finished Nationals report coming?
Yeah,
we've got two half-written ones now.
Yeah.
One has words and
but
one has
yeah.
pictures.
Yeah. But we've been talking with Alex about writing a joint article on the Battle of the Reichstag. So I'd be covering a list for the Germans, and he'd be covering a list for the Soviets. And we tried. The idea is to make historical lists, but still something that you could consider taking into a tournament. Battle of the Reichstag. So I'd be covering. And Richard, you put your volume
Yeah,
on.
I know.
Cheers, mate.
Just because go back to where you were and start again.
Just rolling back.
Okay.
No, it came through fine.
Yeah, somebody making a comment about Mark's cheese on the YouTube feed.
He's a big fan of the Gorgonzola.
Yeah, as apparently
Yeah.
as he keeps.
It's all cheesy till somebody works
player
out how to beat
that Mark's got into the game and is obviously feeding him a diet of Stilton and cheddar, which seems a little bit unfair, Mark, given you've got a bit of a captive audience down there.
Well, I mean, it'll teach the
north.
player to counter Mark's list.
Yeah. No, so I know that you guys are working on a joint article.
Yeah.
I thought we could probably finish off with just I know there's been I think since we last spoke the new missions packs dropped as well. So
that's interesting.
Maybe just finish off with people's views on that, because I've been honest, I haven't played any of the new missions because when we played in Finland, the new missions pack wasn't out, so we played with the old missions pack. And I play so seldomly unless I'm going abroad to see friends that be interested to know that if you guys are playing at a club, I don't play at a club either. So what your views on the new missions pack were? The general consensus from friends seems to be it fixes a lot of problems.
Counter-attack change is great with the defender. Because we showed statistically, Soren did a lot of work to show just how easy it was for the attacker to win it. And now that the defender goes first, I think it's a meeting engagement as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good change because it was horrific for the defender.
There's a few of the scenarios where they've got that interesting dynamic of either the defender going first or the meeting engagement rule being brought in for only one player, which is interesting. That creates some interesting things. The only one I've actually played at present is the revised version of Fighting Withdrawal, where you don't start withdrawing until turn 3 instead of turn 2. What difference that makes or not, I'm not sure. It makes a difference for if you've got high point value units where you don't have the numbers. If you've got lots and lots of units anyway, you're playing some sort of spam list, it makes no difference. It actually only helps you if you don't start withdrawing to turn 3s. So it's a bit list situational, that one. The others, I'm all for variety. The more scenarios there are, the better. Because one thing I do know that an awful lot of gamers don't do is bother to read the scenarios properly. And the number of times you can beat players because they don't really understand the scenarios, because they just don't play them or haven't read them or understood them, is beyond belief. I often say, if you're playing a game, you can lose the game in turn 1, you can never win it. And if you don't read the scenario, your chances of losing in turn 1 are going to go up fairly exponentially.
Apart from when in V3, when there was that whole
when you could do that stupid, in
We're
V3,
not-
you could actually win the game.
Yes.
You could win the game before your opponent had actually had a turn in V3.
I've done that though with V3 with the recce deployment move.
Yeah.
But the whole fort thing, I think, given that the individual that came up with that particular ruse is sadly no longer around.
Yeah.
We maybe just let that slide. It
wasn't that individual.
Was it not? I thought it was Steve
No.
that had come up with that.
No, it was just.
I mean, well, okay. I mean, the thing was, it was so situational that it would only the amount of effort that was spent debating it. It's only going to happen one time in 1,000 anyway.
Yeah.
So
And that's actually a good point for a lot of this. A lot of it, the amount of energy that gets expended on discussing some of this compared to the times you ever see it. The whole hoo-ha the other day about the lessons from the front mod, which made no. It makes
Which hoo-ha was that?
What did they? Not the mortar ranging in. One of the.
Oh, the fact that you don't you stay ranged in when you move.
No, or staying ranged in that makes
if
sense.
you move so if you have a mortar team in your infantry,
you can
move the infantry, but
and not
leave the mortar
lose
still.
Which makes complete
stays
sense.
Ranged in,
which makes absolute sense.
Yes, absolutely, and means that you're still having to re-roll hits for a one mortar team, which is fire.
Why is that? Why?
It's great for my late war Romanians.
Well, I have a simple solution to re-rolls.
Which is
we want to. They want to speed the game up, right? So why don't they just follow like everybody else's precedent? And we'll get rid of re-rolls completely. You don't need them. So all you've got to do is if you've got a 1 or 2 tube,
add +1.
You add +1 to hit. And if you've got a 5 or 6 gun battery, you're -1 to hit.
Yeah.
And that has exactly the same statistical effect as a reroll, irrelevant of what you're shooting at. So, and that would speed the game up because instead of having to roll on my dice twice, I've now only got to roll them once.
And you're right, because some of their logic, they did it with some rules, like protected ammo used to be a reroll.
Yeah, it used to be a reroll.
And they changed it to +1.
You get +1 to your motivation.
And actually, now that you can hit on 7s and 8s, which I have an issue with. I think
there is the way they do that is not right. Yeah,
no, it isn't. Statistically, absolutely missed.
Yeah, it's complete.
But now that you can hit on a 7 or an 8, moving it, that shift actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, because all you're doing is effectively, most of the time when you're bombarding, the worst you can roll to hit when you bombard is a 5 at the moment. So it's 4 for cautious troops, 1 because you can't see the aim point, or you fight, or it's obscured by smoke. You still take the +1 for that. So you're needing a 5. So even if you push that to a 6, those 1 or 2 tube mortars can still hit you.
Yeah,
you still haven't got to worry about moving to 7s and 8s.
To be fair, Soviets and mid-war Yanks get really used to ranging in on 6s.
Well, so Soviet artillery can't range in mid-war full stop. So.
That's why you buy
not having an observer doesn't help.
that is one of the better historical aspects
it is
of the
actually
game,
because actually they would have fired 9 times out of 10 flat anyway at you.
Is that still the rule in Team Yankee where an observer gives you +1 to range in?
Yeah, that's why the French artillery is so good.
I never I never understood why they didn't bring that into V4 Flames, because I've never taken OP, and I have never really had a game where I go, oh, I wish I'd taken one of them. But if it was +1 to range in, you go, well, actually. Yeah.
Well, actually, this not necessarily +1 to range in, but negate the penalty for terrain. Actually, would be a good way to make the observer better, worth having.
Yeah.
So you can, when you're ranging
and bring in more infantry observers.
Yeah,
bring in infantry observers.
The best one there though, Hawk, is the Hungarian OP. In mid-war he's an infantryman, and in late war you get some rubbish toldy tank. You can't put him on foot, and you kind of think, you've given me a half decent observer in mid-war, and then you take it all away from me in late war.
Right. There's this big tall tower I could go and spot from.
Yeah, or alternatively, I can sit in my little tin car down here.
And I can't see a
observers are always the perfect way to highlight the problems with the 100-point system, because you take the Germans, you go for 1 point, you can have a Panzer III OP at front armor 5 and is a tank, or you can pay the same amount of money and have a flimsy half track that will just blow up to any light gun, and you're like,
and I think the thing is that they allow some of the OP tanks to stay armed, don't they? During the
I was going to say some of them can shoot, some of them can't.
Yeah, some of them have an MG, don't they?
Yeah, there's no real consistency.
I always used to like the Ninja. Do you remember that used to be known as the Ninja Sherman OP in V3? And it was like just a really cheap Sherman that you just used to drive around blatting away with.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the American Sherman OP can still shoot,
We've diverged from missions.
Sorry.
That's fine. That's good. That's the whole point.
But more missions is good. More missions is good.
But do you think they should have left the option? Because I think that's actually confusing for a new player. So you've got the expanded mission matrix, and you've now got this expanding mission matrix where you roll this and you go, well, you can play that one or you can play that one. They're both the same mission, but a bit of a variation.
They're variation of the same thing.
And I think that's not very new player friendly.
No, I don't know why they didn't. Why don't we have a version of the Matrix with the experimental missions and a version without? Arguably, you could say we're going to play with the standard missions, or we can always use the experimental ones. But yeah, if you're a new player, it's a challenging question. Which one of these should we be playing? Well, it'll be interesting to see. Are we having the expanded experimentals at the Nationals, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to play with a mix.
Oh yeah, I better.
That'll be another edit.
Yeah.
Another edit to the pack. Another edit to the rules pack.
So, you got a different view, Luda, or is that kind of?
I haven't.
Have you played them?
I haven't played
me
since the Helsinki tournament, where I didn't even play technically on my behalf. So yeah, I've played a few games of Team Yankee since, but going to the discussion of more missions, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's a good thing. It's always nice to have a wider variety of missions to choose from or to play. And
you don't play the same game 10 times.
No, and it makes changes more interesting to us as well. I mean, if they start coming up with more, why not coming up with more missions and then rotating in and out, or having some kind of system where it
like seasons,
random something like that.
Yeah, I think that the more variety you've got, even in a small group of friends who play, the better. Where you've only got one army each, if there's more ways to play the game, it doesn't matter what 2 armies you've got, you can play 18 missions, and I guarantee the outcomes will be different in all 18. There'll be some that your army's good at and some that your mate's army's good at, and it makes for a much better hobby experience for both players, rather than just getting beat every week or every time you play.
The Team Yankee UK, which was quite interesting because we had the Republic of Ireland, and last time I checked, they weren't in the UK. But we used the basic missions, and it was really noticeable that I've played them for so long that even newer players were even then at a disadvantage.
Oh, so you didn't use the expanded matrix?
We didn't. I did when I played. Some people who were happy to use it, but most people wanted to play the
standard 12.
And oh wow!
I don't think it helped them in any way playing the standard one, because I think they're just so. Those people that have played a long time have played them a lot. But that was fun. Nice to see some new players and Team Yankee.
That's what's good.
Yes, there were some nice new models on the table as well. So very quickly, what's next for everybody? And then I think we'll put the show to bed, and I'll do post-production tomorrow after I've fed and walked the dogs. If they haven't trashed the house upstairs, there's been quite a lot of barking going on. So
I'm sure you'll be all right.
Who knows what they've been doing. So what's up next for you, Martin?
Me, well, for those that have been following the blog, I've gone cavalry mad. And I'm working on the monstrous creation that is my Hungarian cavalry.
Oh, cool.
Which may actually go to the Nationals. I can guarantee I won't win a game with them, but they should be good fun. And they will frighten the pants out of people for the sheer speed that moves at.
I once won a V3 competition with Romanian cavalry.
I was going to say they're hard to win games with cavalry. They are hard to win with. But so they're almost finished. I'm down to the last 3 little bits of it, which
they're
is
almost finished.
Well, I've got some finished ones as well. Finished. No, I'm still trying to get some Larty anti-tank rifle teams to finish my finish completely. Because Battlefront still won't sell them to me unless I buy an entire pack, which is ridiculous for 2 models.
Special order.
Yeah, they've got a code, but that code's not available. Yeah, it's FIO8.
And I don't think anybody else does them anymore.
You can't get them anywhere.
I got mine from that were Battlefront. They've all
I bet you I could find them.
Well, I'm sure you could probably find me a couple of models, Mark. Yeah,
we'll have a chat.
Anyway, Luda, apart from your article with Alex, what's next for you?
In May there will be, in the middle, halfway through May, there's going to be a tournament in Switzerland, which is a doubles tournament. I'm flying over there with a good friend of mine to play. And
is Fred running that?
No.
No, Switzerland. Etienne is running that.
Etienne's running it.
Ah.
A few of the guys.
And,
From TL.
Yeah, and the weekend after that, there's going to be the Team Yankee World Series tournament in Milan, which I'm also going to with my IDF.
Sir?
I mean, it's easy. I'm
Never
going to fly to Geneva. I'm going to work from Geneva for about a week, and then I'm driving to Milan with the Chen. So simple.
Greta's
Choose
going
a
to
job
start
where
having
you can
words with
work.
you.
Yeah, I was going to come to that doubles, but unfortunately, it clashes with me having to be here looking after the dogs. So I'm going to need to find another competition to go to later in the year. Mark,
Nationals.
No, I only play in competitions that are outside of the UK and Wales.
Outside of the UK and Wales. It's why
Well,
it's not
outside
part of
the
the UK
UK.
anymore.
Well, it's so
Outside
far
the UK
together,
and
it might as well
Wales.
be another country.
Or maybe I should
So-
have said I only play outside the UK or in countries that have some conceivable chance of leaving the UK soon.
Well,
So everywhere but England.
where's that?
That's why they
Everywhere
went
but
to
England.
Scotland.
Well, not at the moment, no. We have our travails at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've got a few travails, haven't you, politically in the moment?
We have, yes. Maybe live in interesting times at the moment.
It's always interesting. It's always an interesting
So
place.
it's the Nationals, is it, Mark? For you? That your
Sorry?
next thing?
Well, I'm painting a potential army for ETC,
Yeah.
which so I
we've seen
printed winter, like proper winter Soviets. So it's a bit different.
Nice.
So I'm doing those at the minute, and I've just backed the Kickstarter for the printable bases. So I'm trying to do like all scenic bases for them, and I've spent a fortune on AK Interactive Snow. So we'll see how that goes. And then, to be honest, I've then got to pluck the energy up to do this
Ain't it?
Volsturm army. But I'm like, I probably don't need that until co-rivalry next year, which is February, which is probably the next late war tournament I'll end up going to. So I might have a bit of a palette cleanse over the summer because I'm going to paint the Star Wars Shatter Points coming out, and a mate wants to play that. So I might paint that up. I think that's out in June, which is probably about when I'll finish these Soviets. And then refreshed, come back to the billion old men with rifles.
Right.
That's
Well,
a
I've
lot.
not got
That's going to be a lot of
cleared
words.
off on the VDV. I've finished off. I've just got a few. I need to find some VDV decals for my BMDs, and then that's pretty much all my Team Yankee and Flames of War stuff cleared off for the moment. And that's me doing 1/3000th ships for Southwest Pacific, and whisper it quietly. I'm doing a bit of bolt action. So I
You're
end
going to
up.
get another
great
Northag
game.
army.
Say again.
You're going to get another Northag army.
I will, yeah. I mean, it'll have to be probably be Swedes, I think, if the Swedes have got the S tank in. But yeah, because
I don't think there's any Swedes in Northag.
I'm fed. Well, it's north, right? North.
Yeah, but it doesn't help that he's not in the book, Richard.
Better than using that dreadful French. Well, not the dreadful French list, but having to pretend that my French are British. And they've not spoken to me since, and their dice rolls were very indicative of the fact that they were not happy.
That's what happened.
It was embarrassing.
There was
But
a large amount of
actually-
Gallic shoulder shrugging from your metal models. Yeah?
Absolutely. Making Mark play the goodies and actually losing to him as the goodies was all right, because I don't mind losing the Brits. So he was using his nicely painted VDV. But I bought some stuff off eBay that said it was Soviet infantry, and it turned up just as I got home from being in Helsinki, and it's 28 Finnish infantry. And I thought, well, I'd been thinking of having another bolt action army to add to my surprise Russians. So I'm painting up. We're doing a little escalation campaign at my local club, so I'm painting up a very small bolt action Finnish army. But I have got a very large Soviet tank in 28mm, which is bigger than anything I've ever seen, which is going to be a bit of a surprise. As no one will be watching from my club, they have no idea what a T-35 is, but by Christ, are they going to be shocked when one turns up on a bolt.
I was going to say that's going to fill a lot of board.
I've heard good things about. I presume you're doing it in 28mm. 28mm battle group.
Okay, this is
Apparently
just your
worked very well.
to bring down stuff for battle group. I've got lots of tanks now. I've got 3 KV2s.
I've got a lot of
That
KBs
requires-
as well.
Yeah, not in 28 million, you know.
insane-
28 mil.
Mark,
Not in 28 million.
Yeah.
battle group in 28 mil. Won't you need an insanely large table?
No,
He's got a
so
garage.
someone I know does it down here, and I was dubious, but I've looked at some of his pictures. I mean,
Okay.
you don't. You obviously it's scalable to your size, so it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
true.
reinforced platoon level.
Okay.
And obviously you don't have as much, but apparently it actually works pretty well.
All right. Well, we can give that a go because I've got Finns and Soviets. So if
Same
you
as
want
we play
28
Nordag in
mil,
15 mil.
Yeah. I mean, we can do that because I've got both sides for that, so that's fine. Right, and then I'm going the ETC obviously, and then Søren is trying to entice me to a
Are
competition.
you flying? Are you gonna
I'm
suck
going
it
on
up
the
and
boat.
actually fly on a plane?
No, I'm going on the boat
Where from?
because I've got a ton of stuff to take. So
Where
He's
are you
only
going
got to get to
Are you
Belgium.
going to Amsterdam from Newcastle?
yeah, and then I'll get the train.
You're
Get the
taking the
train.
party.
So party boat.
Trust me, I can sleep through anything. Right?
And then, so to avoid flying, you're driving
after a
from
bottle of
Glasgow
scotch.
to
I'm not
Newcastle.
driving. No, I'm gonna get the train down to Newcastle. Then I'm gonna get the boat, and then I'll get the train
Boat.
from
You're gonna
Amsterdam.
get a
Amsterdam.
taxi
I
over
like
to-
train. I like traveling by train. Right. I really don't like flying
That's a really cool way to travel.
for reasons that I'm not going to share with anybody.
Very
on this.
working class. He's
Um,
proletarian.
Absolutely. You know, it's all part of being proletarian. And
Ironically,
net
like
zero.
more expensive though.
Yeah, it is. It's. I mean, last time I went on the boat when I went to Hasselt last year, and I went down to Hull. That was just bonkersly expensive because everything just cost a fortune. If I can work it right, I might go down to London and get the Eurostar. But I prefer it to travel. I prefer not to fly if I can help it. Obviously, I went by plane to Helsinki.
Well, I was going to invite you to fly with me from Newcastle, but there you go.
I don't take this the wrong way, and that's very nice. But I've got a ton of stuff that I need to take, and flying EasyJet from Newcastle will mean that I'm going to. All right. You flew EasyJet to Reykjavik, so don't tell me that you only travel by. This is not a podcast. This is not a video cast about Battlefront anymore. It's just become four mates taking a piss out of it. I might clear this up in post production. But it's not me and Mark.
Come for the Flames of War stage for the banter.
Depends on because we've got quite a lot of kit to take over. If I can convince some of my colleagues to take the kit over that they need to take, I might consider flying. But the train journey across the Netherlands and Belgium is a really nice one. I quite like it.
I was going to say it's quite a nice
And
run.
quick.
I've done that.
Quite a nice run, yeah. And if you book plenty in advance, it doesn't end up costing quite a lot of money. And it just means that I don't have to get stressed about flying because I really don't like it very much. And as I get older and older, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. So, but it was worth flying to Helsinki to see Luda and some friends and go to the Tank Museum where they've got. This is going to be the closing line. Where they've got, of course, an armored train.
Yep.
So there we go.
But
Anyway,
guess what? They just got a few weeks ago. I think it's like 2 weeks ago.
What?
A King Tiger.
Where have you got that from?
Probably
From Sweden,
Germany.
and it's borrowed from Bollington, actually.
See, of course, it's completely anachronistic at Parallel because everything else they've got at Parallel they've used, and there were no King Tigers in Finland at all. Before anybody starts building armies with endless T-26s with a couple of King Tigers thrown in.
Richard, then you must have missed the Sherman that's next at the very end of the tank line at Parola, where
On the outside bit,
there's a Sherman,
is there?
and I'm not sure even the Russians brought Shermans against the Finns.
I'll have to check
75s.
photos because it might have been a way for everything that I saw was.
There could be because it should be after the Panzer IV.
Okay.
So it could have been on loan, but I know that.
Yeah, I honestly
King
don't
Ti-
remember seeing it. I honestly don't remember seeing a Sherman, but obviously
But
no, I don't think there were. I don't think there were Lend-Lease stuff.
Okay.
Well, there was Lend-Lease stuff used against Finns, but it tended to be
Churchills
Valentines and
and stuff.
Matildas and Churchills and all
Yeah.
sort of that sort of stuff. Whereas the Shermans were in Germany. So
Yeah. But there's a King Tiger now, and even though it's been 3 weeks since the Team Yankee tournament played between Cold War era tanks, which were awesome.
I'm really sad.
Yeah,
that
I might have to go back there now because there's a king tiger I can go and see live.
Yeah, it was good. I'm really upset that I missed the.
We had a chat with the museum, and we are hoping to convince them to switch the dates so that since the Finnish nationals will be at the same location at the same time next year,
cool.
we are hoping to be able to push the Team Yankee tournament later to make it more accessible for the international players, because the player base is basically the same in Flames of War and Team Yankee. So yeah, I know there was a lot of people that had to make the choice between Team Yankee or Flames of War, and well, technically I can say I'm happy that most actually everybody chose Flames of War.
Yeah,
that meant if you entered a Team Yankee competition, you won.
Right,
could have been like that.
Right, that's it. I need to go and feed the dogs.
Yep.
And
I'm gonna go make dessert.
I'll tidy this up in post-production. Thanks for everybody that joined us. Particularly thanks to colleagues in the States that were providing us with info, which is always really good stuff. And we'll see you on the next edition.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.